Miami got another one. The Hurricanes have locked in their first wide receiver in this recruiting class. Coach Kevin Beard is in his bag. From the 334 to the 305. Dalen Upshaw, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
10 Days of Madness continues. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We'll talk on this episode about what happens next after Miami has just landed Daylyn Upshaw earlier this weekend. We'll discuss where Miami now ranks in the class of 2025 in recruiting. But for the best darn breakdown you're going to find on the newest Miami Hurricanes verbal commit, I figured why not bring on the man who happens to be our recruiting overlord, and he happens to now live and scout the exact area that Daylyn Upshaw is from. We have our guy, Brian Smith, with us, who's also my colleague at allhurricanes.com. So, Brian, I'm sure you scouted Central High School, Phenix City quite a bit. And Dalen Upshaw, he's former high school teammate of Cam Coleman, who's now at Auburn. So I'm sure you've scouted the both of them, but I'd love your take on Upshaw.
Explosive in the state finals, like the third play from scrimmage, he had like a 70-yard touchdown where he just ran by everybody. I didn't know who he was until that play, but I'm like, who is that? He just went by the guy. That kind of made me look at the program. The other thing about him is he's been coached. He knows how to break down a defensive back, press coverage, off coverage, how to beat the cushion, etc. He's a really skilled player. Offers from across the Southeastern Conference, so that's obviously a good sign. And finally, he's just a guy that's really good at making people miss after the catch too. So screen, short passes, etc. can still be big gains.
Yeah, some of the other schools, and this is just a handful that Daylyn Upshaw had offers from, Auburn, Florida State, Georgia, Texas. Those are some of the highlights. There were a number of others. But interestingly, with Daylyn Upshaw's recruitment, the only official visit he took, he had others that he could use in the fall if he wants to, but the only OV he took this summer was to Miami. So, Brian, it sounds like Kevin Beard, Mario Cristobal, and company must have sold Upshaw on the U pretty early on.
I'd heard they were trending with him, which is just so random for a Phenix City kid, but Mario knows that state well. As a reminder to those out there, he coached at Bama under Saban at one point, so he knows everybody in that state in some capacity. And they've really focused on it. They got 2 kids from the state of Alabama last year. I think it's a really good state for Miami to constantly get at least one kid because per capita, I think it's number 6 in the country for NFL players. I mean, that's a good sign. So, again, speed never goes out of style. They need receivers in this class to kind of get back to where they need to be. They can put with the last class, if they can get like 1 or 2 more really good players, Miami would be in a great spot, and this is a good start.
So his high school offense last year, Daylyn Upshaw, so he plays opposite Cam Coleman, who was an absolute phenomenon, and yet Upshaw was able to put up 1,185 receiving yards, 15 touchdown catches, 59 grabs. Like a lot of recruits would put up numbers like that over the course of 2 seasons, not one. I don't have Cam Coleman's numbers in front of me, but I'm sure it was through the roof. So the situation that Central High School in Phenix City, Alabama, it must have been a lot like Chaminade last year with JoJo Trader and Jeremiah Smith.
Their 3rd and 4th receivers were good players too. Because of Cam, everybody else had single coverage, and at the high school level, not many guys can handle Daylyn anyway. So it was lights out. I can't remember the quarterback's name, but he was probably a happy guy. I'm quite sure. I mean, they had some really twitchy guys. They won the 7A state title. Phenix City plays elite programs. They'll play schools in Georgia. They'll play teams all across the state. They beat Thompson, which is the preeminent #1 program in the state of Alabama, in the state finals. I mean, he's going to come into the University of Miami as a quote-unquote battle-tested football recruit. And I also know that he played with 24K, 7-on-7 program. He was a key guy for them. This is a kid that Miami, they don't always get guys like this out of state. It's nice to not always have to rely on Florida receivers. I mean, there's plenty of them, but this is a really nice get for Beard and the Canes.
By the way, every time the recruiting overlord joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Upshaw, in some of the conversations he's had since committing, may have already maybe tipped his hand to the type of role he could play at Miami, because he's compared his game to Xavier Restrepo. So I don't necessarily know for sure if he wants to play in that slot role. And I know he has more of that build. He's about 6 foot, 185. But, one of the things, and him better than me, I've never scouted him in person before, but I have heard that obviously he can play outside or he can play in the slot. So do you have any vision on what role Daylyn Upshaw may play at Miami?
I was actually thinking about that earlier today, Alex. I don't think there's one answer. And Beard will want to move guys around anyway. Yeah. Restrepo's size kind of limits him a little bit, but I imagine he could play outside a little bit too. This kid's bigger than X. I think he'll play flanker, and I also think he'll end up playing slot. He's not a boundary guy. He's not big enough to take on that all day long, but he's not small either. He's a strong kid. He'll end up weighing 200 pounds. He's 180, 185 right now. He'll weigh 200 pounds before he leaves UM, no question. I think he could play multiple spots, and they might use him in the backfield or something like that for screens and reverses and stuff. There's a lot of different things you can do in a spread offense. So look for him to be a multi-use player for the Canes.
Here's how Upshaw ranks according to 24/7 Sports. The 24/7 composite rankings have him as the 59th wide receiver in the class. They have him as the 18th ranked player in the state of Alabama, which Brian was just talking about how much talent has come out of there. It's not bad to be the 18th ranked player in that state. It's not North Dakota. We're talking about Alabama produces a lot of talent these days. And when we come back, we'll talk about where Miami's recruiting class now ranks. Spoiler alert, they're in the top 10. And we're still within this 10 days of madness, and the next 5 days are going to be critical, right? In terms of whether Miami can start trending for a top 5 class or if they keep trending inside the top 10. So, my friends, we're not done yet. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I already know you're keeping it locked to eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, I invite you to check out Locked On ACC. I also host that show, co-host it with the awesome Kenton Gibbs, who's a former NC State Wolfpack defensive tackle. We have a lot of fun, especially in these days of conference realignment rumors, and we're going to be out at the ACC Kickoff Media Days in a week. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you check out Locked On ACC. On this episode of Locked On Canes, we are joined by Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord. So Brian, Miami now has the, according to 24/7 Sports, the 9th ranked recruiting class in the country, behind Oklahoma at 8, Texas A&M at 7, LSU at 6, Notre Dame at 5, Oregon at 4. Miami's going head-to-head with the Ducks this week for a top player. Georgia's at number 3 now, Alabama at number 2, and Ohio State has the number 1 class in the country at the moment. And so, Brian, Miami trending in the top 10 right now. Before we even start thinking about top 5, do you think they're going to keep trending in that top 10 between now and National Signing Day?
Miami's best recruits, many at least, haven't decided yet. It's just kind of weird how it is. They've got a chance to go way up. It could be a top 5 class. It really could, but Again, you got to finish, but you got Pickett and Antoine coming up. Those are two really, really important recruits because they're position of need and they're kids that put a lot of time and effort into. So I think Miami's conservatively going to end in the top 10. Question is, do they get to the 5 spot or maybe higher? It's iffy. There's a lot of time left, but they have a chance.
Yeah, we're just a few days away. On Wednesday is when 5-star defensive back DJ Pickett, Zephyr Hills High School, Miami legacy. He's going to be making his decision on July 17th. That's this coming Wednesday. And I've felt cautiously optimistic for the past, I would say several weeks, but really the past several months. I felt cautiously optimistic. I hope Miami can get this over the finish line. Just having an idea of the way the recruitments go of 5-star players like this. Obviously, a lot can still happen over the next few days, so I don't think either side should be taking any sort of a victory lap. I have noticed something, though, Brian, that some of the same writers and insiders who cover Oregon and were predicting Pickett to go to Oregon are now backtracking a little bit. Like this one insider talk about, Miami's making a serious push, and in the word push, he used a $ instead of the S in the word push, which is funny because all that I keep hearing about Oregon is about their unlimited NIL budget because Phil Knight, who's 86 years old, wants to win a title for Oregon before he's gone. And, Miami's the school that's way closer to his home and family. He's got family members who played and play at the Hurricanes currently, and yet they're talking about Miami trying to buy him, which is interesting. Now, I've gone on record saying this, and I'll say it again. DJ Pickett's decision is not going to be entirely based on money. And I think anyone who tries to make it out that way, whichever side loses here, if either side tries to say, well, we only lost because the other side paid more, I think that's just a cowardly narrative where you just don't want to admit you lost. That's not going to be the primary driver for DJ Pickett's decision. But I am curious as to your take, Brian, with 3 days left. How do you think this plays out?
I'll take Miami until otherwise proven, and I'm sure both will compensate him well. I highly doubt that's the end-all, be-all. Right. That's my guess. I could be wrong. I mean, Miami might just say, you know what, we'll give you $300,000 more a year or something. Something like that might, okay, I get it. But I doubt it's going to be that big a difference. Because, again, Phil Knight is the ultimate booster of all time. Meaning he owns Nike. I mean, there's no way to trump that. There's just not. So anyway, if DJ picks Oregon, it's because they did a good job. If he picks Miami, it's because they did a good job. It's always about relationships first. The money is secondary for a kid like this who is very intelligent, by the way. I know DJ well. I highly doubt he's concerned about the money at this point. He knows it's going to come. He will make plays and make money after he gets to whatever school he goes to anyway. He'll get endorsements of all kinds. I don't think that's going to be the real determining factor, the upfront money.
It's just always a cop-out. Like, oh, they got this player, we didn't, and look how much they're allegedly paying him. It's just ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, guys, for the next 3 days, we're going to be covering Pickett decision 2024, the class of 2025. I'm curious to ask Brian your take on what's going on with Jaboree Antoine, the 4-star corner out of New Iberia, Louisiana. He's going to be announcing on the 20th of July. So that's part of this 10 days of madness. And I keep reading anyway over the last few days that Florida State is making a big time push. I know Miami has been making a push, but Florida State's also been making a push. You cover Florida State very closely. What are you hearing?
I just talked with somebody from Louisiana that lives right down the road from me. One of the guys that works out all the kids, one of the trainers and stuff. And he's heard the same thing. Florida State's making a push, but we both thought Miami was kind of the team for a little while. I don't know what making a push means for them because they usually don't. Right. NIL for them usually doesn't match Miami. Miami had an earlier push with them, was mentioned more. I don't know, but they both got an official visit. You don't want to count out Florida State for a kid. You never know. And Surtain's a really good DB coach. I'm sure it's not hard for him to get guys to come. But Miami needs DBs more. That's the reason if I had to pick, I would go with Miami. And by the way, if they get both Pickett and him, that would be as good a corner class as you're going to see. So.
Yeah, and then people can just start complaining about not having enough receivers again, which is
well, that's what fans do. They're never happy.
Exactly.
Let's not kid ourselves. That's always the case.
Are you still expecting Florida for Vernell Brown on the 21st?
I have heard nothing different in the last 2
Right.
days. Everybody's picking Florida now. From what I was told, the visit to UF was the best visit he had. That was the key to it.
Yeah, and by the way, in closing here on Dalen Upshaw, I like the fact that my guy Luke Nickel has a receiver in the class finally. Luke,
true.
Miami's committed 2025 core. Now, Luke has been very happy in recent weeks about how many offensive linemen he now has, including SJ Alofi Tuli. Miami recently landed Max Buchanan. They landed a few other guys before that. And now he's starting to get some receivers in as well. So our guy Luke is hopefully going to be feasting in a couple of years here.
Yeah, they need the big guys, and Miami has done a tremendous job. Think about when you and I first started doing this show, like I'd come on and where Miami was to now. Well, oh my God, it's just amazing the difference in depth and overall talent along the front wall.
Do you are you going to get sucked into the hysteria with this video game EA 25? Are you going to play that at all? Because like I'm going to play it. Every person I play against online is going to kick my butt because I'm terrible at video games, but I will get sucked into the hysteria. Will you?
Yes and no. I have one condition. I need to actually buy another game system. I haven't had one in a while. But here's my thing. They're going to do updates from what I've heard. Like if you get the online version or whatever. I want to see the first few bugs kind of worked out of it between now and the end of August. I know how this stuff works. I've been buying video games since the 1980s. Now that they can just do it constantly, let's see what stupid things they have to get rid of, or there's like one play that's great. Everybody can use it to score. I want to see that first. But I got to admit, I've watched a bunch of stuff on like YouTube.
Yeah, it looks cool.
It really does. Compared to the like dots and stuff they had in the 1980s for games. Literally. It's way better.
You know, people were making fun of me last week as I was doing a Q&A show and somebody asked me about like how I'm going to use the dynasty mode. Cause I used to in the old college football games when I had like the PlayStation 3, when they come out with college games, like I love the dynasty mode because I love the recruiting feature on there. And sometimes I'll simulate the actual game so I can get to the next recruiting cycle. And people were mercilessly making fun of me for that. Guys, I'm going to have my loafers on while I play the video game recruiting for Miami. I'm going to go all in on this recruiting mode because, again, Brian, I stink at the actual game. But when it comes to, like, the recruiting stuff, I'm actually halfway decent at that. So I'm primarily going to play the game to recruit fictional high school players. That's going to be my goal.
I used to like that part better, too. I got to the point I was beating teams like 100-7 and stuff. So, you know, I enjoyed the recruiting more.
So real quick, as somebody brought him up in the live chat. And by the way, guys, we are live right now on our YouTube channel. So make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On Canes. If you're listening on the audio version, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the pods. I know that Gary Furman at Cane Sport did drop an RPM prediction last week for Jose Epinesa to land at Miami. I know Miami's been trending well there, but to my knowledge, Brian, we don't know a commitment date for him, correct? I don't think we do.
I haven't seen one, but that doesn't mean it's not been delivered to the schools privately. You would think that kid wants to get it over with because he's getting recruited really hard. Utah, Iowa, Penn State, Miami.
Right. Yeah, I've got his 24/7 page open now, and usually if they know when somebody's committing, they have that little bar. They don't have anything for him, so they don't have any commitment date listed for Jose Epinesa. But obviously, you know, for Miami fans, if you feel like that could be the trending direction for him right now, you want him to announce as soon as possible, right? Because if this drags on for a few months, Miami's momentum could change there.
100%. Yeah, that's a recruitment that's just wild because he's got schools, no in-state school for him, but he has ties to Iowa, so that, you know, they're considered the favorite. But Penn State, Miami, and Utah are pretty good programs, so I'm curious to see where he goes.
Well, we thank Brian Smith for stopping by, as always, and thank everyone for stopping by, watching this live episode with us. And at some point this coming week, we are going to be tracking down SJ Alofi Tuli for an interview here on Locked On Canes. We've had to reschedule a couple times because I was traveling the last couple days. He works out like all day, which is awesome. Like we need guys like that. He gives me like the windows of time he can do, and it's like a half hour a day he's not lifting and working out is basically what it is for him. So we're going to try to track down SJ pretty soon, who is, you guys know, my favorite offensive lineman in the class, and I cannot wait to chat with him at some point. And by the way, Brian, are you aware that every time, and I go on a lot of trips, but every time I leave town, Miami lands a recruit. They land a commit.
Oh, it's automatic. It's automatic.
People are begging me to not be around on the 17th when DJ Pickett announced. Like I've got to go. And if anyone in the chat, if you want to like start a GoFundMe to send me to Tahiti, I'd be more. I'm just like, I'm out of vacation money right now. I can't go anywhere else this summer because I've already got my trip booked
There you go.
for the ACC Media Days, which is in a couple weeks. I can't afford another trip. So if you guys want to foot the bill, by all means.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be contributing to that, Alex. But at the same time,
Don't blame you.
I get what Miami's saying. It always seems to happen that way. Like they get commitments on Saturdays and stuff like that. It's really wild.
Yeah, Cam Ward, which was a complete surprise. Like the timing of it was a complete surprise. I was on a cruise, like I was in international waters, and then we out of nowhere, Cam Ward committed to Miami back in January. So we'll see if it happens again. Thanks everyone for stopping by. I'll try to go on vacation again. Make sure you guys follow Brian Smith at FBScout_Florida. Make sure you check out his work. He's a colleague of mine at allhurricanes.com. He puts in tireless amounts of work in everything he does. So make sure you check that out. And we will talk to you guys again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.